Welcome back to the Manufacturing Knowhow Podcast, brought to you by Rain Engineering. I'm your host, Don Rahrig, and if you enjoyed episode 2, you'll remember our discussion on how information flows into manufacturing execution systems and how GE Vernova's Proficy Smart Factory tools support that. Today, we're taking a deeper dive into the critical topic for FSMA 204 compliance, the creation of FDA-required electronically sortable spreadsheets, or ESS. We're joined again by Chris Carlins, CTO of Rain Engineering, Joe Gerstl, Director of MES Software at GE Vernova, and Scott Butler, educator from the FSO Institute. Welcome back, gentlemen.
Thanks, Don.
We'll just jump right into it. Many companies use a multifunctional ERP system to support the company's ability to trace and recall products. How can Proficy MES link to an ERP system like SAP or Oracle or JD Edwards to share specific manufacturing data with the ERP, such as lot codes and batch and blending data and traceability codes in terms of volumes of production?
So, any MES implementation is integrated with the ERP somehow, some form or fashion. Probably the most important part is getting the orders down from the ERP so that they can get to the shop floor and get executed. So that kind of integration is already in place whenever you have an MES implementation. 99% of the time, that's already there. Now, what is actually integrated is a different question, right? So like the first case I talked about orders, that's not really something that's related to this FSMA 204 topic. But the point is that you can integrate to the ERP pretty straightforward. There's a lot of ways to do it. One is through some software called a middleware software. There's a lot of different middlewares out there. We have a couple that we often run into, something like a MuleSoft or a Juno, or a newer one that we've run into is OPC Router, but some other ones as well. There's Talend. There's all kinds of them that you can use to interface to the ERP. Additionally, there's other ways to do it, just file sharing between the systems, or maybe even a little more sophisticated, writing data to a database and sharing that in between the systems. Those are all custom implementations, but it's very common to interface the two systems. And what you'll see is like the MES can support things like the actual runtime data of the genealogy of the lot that was created, right? You would interface things like the product code and the product description. Sometimes that's called a material master. So you would interface from the ERP down to the MES with that material master that they call it. And that would have things like the product code description, all the details about the product and so forth, units of measure and things like that. And then you would have at least that part available. Now, some other parts, because of the FSMA 204 rules, are asking for some additional information, like things that you wouldn't maybe store. You normally wouldn't store an MES, like the brand code. Like it's not really something that in a manufacturing environment you care about. But that's something that the FSMA 204 rulings are asking for. So it's just another additional thing you could tack on to that interface and pull that over to the MES if you wanted to keep it there. There are other options and there are other ways to do this reporting, and we'll talk about them as we go through. But one way would be to put everything that you ever want to report on into the MES. And it's doable. It's not like these are highly volatile things that change all the time, right? The brand, you're not going to change your brand on your products very often, if ever. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that's pretty low volatility that you could easily sync up and not have to worry too much about syncing in real time kind of stuff.
Yeah, so when you're talking about that, how can the MES platform interface to food supplier management softwares like Food Ready or Safe Food 360, those kind, to match the product or production and batching data with supplier information, that sort of thing?
Yeah, that would probably be the same way. So you'd have some sort of middleware or some sort of file sharing, database sharing technology that you would use. The middlewares make it really easy because you can do REST endpoints and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I feel like you said before, the great thing about Proficy is there's modern ways, APIs, and these integration of third-party tools as a middleware, but also all the legacy ways.
Yeah, there's all the legacy. Yeah, the old like FTP files. I mean, you can still do that if you want to. It's there. Right. It's available. It's not like probably the best way to do it, but could be done if you have an older system that you have trouble getting data in and out of.
I like to add, just because of first couple of questions here really centered around the idea, obviously, of just getting data into Proficy or maybe even out of it. And Joe, you explained the sophisticated ways using middleware, and having, usually what that comes with is you have a company large enough that can support the team that really already is in that middleware layer, right? A company can come in and help with those things, but long term, you want to support that layer because it's interacting with, by definition, multiple parts of your business. And there's no one integration company that will probably run that. It's beneficial to have that in-house. So for much larger companies that you're going to run into that a lot more, I would suggest that if there are companies that only have one manufacturing site, small IT team, to have the flexibility of what I'll call custom integrations. You can think of them as SQL database, sharing of data, flat files, all the things that you were talking about before. The two benefits to a small company is that you can get it up and running pretty quickly. You are in full control over what, by definition, what data is being flowed. And you have a small team where you can put in those business rules. Whenever you have that middle where it's more than just passing data, it has to translate it from the one system to the other. You can have database IDs. You can have, even just in one system, it's 2 character strings, and in the other system, it's identified as the product code all put together. So there's always that business logic that has to happen there. I just like to offer that if you don't have a middleware layer, it could be you're just not ready for that sophistication, or you're just not cost justifiable. We're just focusing on specifically right here, like if you have an initiative like FSMA 204, to just focus on that and get it rolling.
And I think it's probably obvious from what you guys have just said, but this is a two-way integration with these systems, right? You can pull data in, but you can also push back out, let's say, to a warehouse management system or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point.
So we've talked about how ERPs are integrated to Proficy. We've talked a little bit about how maybe a food supplier management or other outside sources can be integrated to Proficy. There's tools and capabilities within Proficy platform to manage quality, or if you have a separate quality management system, to support moving some of that quality data into Proficy to support the product traceability or a food safety investigation. But when generating the FSMA 204 required electronically sortable spreadsheet, are there tools embedded in Proficy to support direct population of a spreadsheet like Microsoft Excel or one of the native reporting tools within Proficy?
Yeah, you can. There's a tool called the Proficy Excel add-in. So you can actually get to that data directly from Excel via a standard set of menus. And the application lets you query based on the various types of data that are in the MES system. For example, you might get the lot code, the lot identifier, and pull that down. That will come with the product description and product code. And then you'll have that data, and you'll go either, as we said before, you could have that other necessary data that is on the sortable spreadsheet, like the brand code, the commodity, the variety, the packaging size, things like that. Those generally aren't stored in the MES, like we were saying, but they could be, and you could have an integration that way and then just pull that data directly into a spreadsheet. Or you could pull the core data that you want into the spreadsheet that is normally in the MES, like the lot identifier and the product description and the product code. And then you could go use that data, like the product code, to reference another system to go grab things like the commodity and the brand name and the variety and things that the new electronic sortable spreadsheet calls for, which I'm actually looking at right now. So you can do it that way. You could do it through our visualization tool called Operations Hub, which allows you to talk to a bunch of different systems, right? So you could talk to the MES directly. There's a connector that lets you do that. Then there's also a connector to talk to other SQL systems in there, or REST calls. So you could do it that way too. And then in the tool, the way that Operations Hub tool works, it's basically a visualization tool, and all the clients that are part of the Proficy system run inside there. But you can also create your own applications that run alongside the out-of-the-box ones. And one of those applications could be this electronic sortable spreadsheet that allows you to go get the data from various places and stick it in a grid type widget in Operations Hub. And then it's viewable, but also there's a little download button that you can click, and it brings the data down as well. to a spreadsheet that you could then forward off to the FDA.
It's a similar concept to what we were talking about with integrations with the ERP, right? There's different levels of sophistication, and depending on how quickly you need to roll something out, the question is, when the fire alarm hits and you need to create one of these spreadsheets within 24 hours, how do you get that data? And so the hard part about collecting all of the data is what we really need to focus on, because 24 hours is not enough time to find the data. But if you know where all the data is, it should be enough time for you to assemble it, right? So if you have a highly sophisticated system, Joe, you already mentioned about the idea that you can have the MES be the one source of truth. You could bring all that data through integration. You could update it on a 24-hour basis, so it knows all of the other things that wouldn't normally be part of the MES. You also mentioned the idea that you can just assemble the data outside of the MES and find those common identifiers, right? So like a product code. If the MES knows this is the traceability path that it went through, raw materials, all the work in process, and the finished goods, then you could pull all the product code information from the ERP just by finding that common identifier for each one of those. So the other part of the sophistication is, do you have it so you're using some kind of data reporting tool that even is able to bring that together for you automatically? Outside of it, you just push all the information together. Do you just manually assemble all the data? Remember, you have some time to do this. Downloading the information from Plan Apps, you mentioned things like Excel and the Excel add-in, or using Operations Hub and pulling data maybe from 2 or 3 other systems, and then just assembling that spreadsheet in its final form. So it's different levels of sophistication. We run into all of those levels, from completely automated to manual. And sometimes it's independent of the size of the company, right? It just matters where people are on their digital journey. So that's what I would add.
Yeah. One of the questions I was going to ask was, can the system be configured to generate the fully populated and sortable spreadsheet? And it looks like there's lots of ways to take care of this issue available in the tool. FSMA 204 requires that all traceability information be retained for a minimum of 2 years. I think that's right. And is the Proficy system capable of retaining information so that electronically sortable spreadsheets could be generated from the traceability information after or over the whole 2-year period?
Yeah, definitely. The data can, we have customers that have years and years of data on their systems.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. No problem.
You can report on it anytime.
Yep.
And looking back anytime over that 2-year period.
Yep.
So what services can a system integrator like Rain Engineering provide to a food manufacturer in assuring the Vernova Proficy system is fully integrated to other company software tools and to support the FSMA 204 traceability and compliance?
Yeah. So in this particular case, we're talking specifically around the integration of other business systems that have a piece of the full puzzle. So we've talked in previous podcasts about the idea that we play a critical role in getting the machines connected up and the data flowing to the MES. And, when we talk about the other side of it is getting all the data together, we spoke about the integrations with SAP, whether it be through a middleware or through flat files. And it's more than just deciding on a technology. Obviously, there's the full implementation and the details of it. So going through a full understanding of what the requirements are, understanding the FSMA 204 spreadsheet, where all the data is, and what's the best method for that team to be able to put something together quickly. So at a high level, I would say that.
I think a lot about our manufacturing know-how offering, the methodology we use for digital transformation in general. Let's talk about the goals and make sure everyone understands the complexities of the FSMA 204 stuff. Then understanding where the gaps are, doing a shop floor analysis. Are there systems on the floor? Is there automation on the floor that we need to connect to? And then working with the customer to figure out where the gaps are and to create a roadmap for that to be able to close the gaps. Once we've worked through all that, then it's a matter of scheduling the execution process. What needs to be done and in what time frame, and figuring out what those scoped projects really look like. So there's the consulting piece. I think, Chris, you've put a lot of videos together around food safety and compliance to different regulations in our manufacturing know-how platform. So I think being able to offer training around that sort of thing in our education platform is another service that we like to talk about. And then, of course, support, ongoing support. So once the implementation's done, just making sure that during mock recalls and things like that, that the systems behave as anticipated and have the data in them the way the customer and the FDA expect to see it. So all really good stuff. Once a company set up the product traceability system to comply, are there other benefits to having all this product data in the ability to improve productivity or product quality in the manufacturing process?
Yeah, there should be. That data can be definitely useful, and especially when it comes to the quality side of it. There's a lot of capability in the Proficy suite to track things around quality. So the ability to track multiple levels of specifications, whether it's entry level in terms of you won't even let somebody enter a value that's out of specification, to the reject, to the warning, of course, so you can make sure that you actually have quality product that's going out the door. And then all the what we call specifications, those limits on either side of the target, plus the target, of course, would all include specifications. Another part of that specification is how often you want to take a particular test, right? So we call that the test frequency. And there's all that information that you're integrating between the ERP and the other systems actually can come be handy when you're looking at that specification information as well.
Yeah, I was thinking about like continuous improvement, just because we're talking about food safety here, but there are all kinds of quality issues that maybe don't impact the safety of the food. That can impact the color, quality, quantity, whatever. And
Yeah.
having all this robust data could mean a lot of good to root cause analysis and the continuous improvement effort, and even just refining first time quality.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Getting your center lines, the initial run of the center lines and so forth. Yep.
I think also evaluating supplier performance. Now that you have this granular information in your system, you can trace back to what vendors are providing materials that work best in your process.
Man, that's a great point, Scott. I think we overlook a lot the ability when you have this level of granularity, this level of information. I think we overlook a lot the ability to make sure that maybe we have multiple suppliers supplying the same material, and you can look at overall quality across all your suppliers. That's a great point.
Yeah, and especially when there's fluctuations in supply chain, you might have to rely on multiple vendors. And what happens when you have a vendor that's consistent but is no longer available, and you have to turn to another one that has slightly different traits to it, and knowing how to adjust for that new process. And you might not get it right the first time. So the other part is, if you're already collecting quality data, you're connecting up to the machines. One of the things that we provide is the ability to have access to the process data too. And of course, the correlation between the quality data of the raw materials coming through, how it looks to the finished product, and the process data that was used to get it there to tweak to get to that golden batch or whatever type of dimensions you're making. So those are all important things. The other thing that comes to mind is a particular example that I was a part of a while back, where they did not know on the processing side of the product how much water they'd be able to add and still have a sufficient product on the canning side. And so just that traceability of understanding that every one of the batches is making to this part of the finished good, you can take those samples and start correlating it as you're manufacturing it. Are we coming up with the quality of product that we need on the filling side as well? And because of that, they were actually able to tighten their specifications and save money on even just one stock keeping unit. So there's so many different benefits. And the neat thing about what this regulation is doing, what we know everybody needs to do in the manufacturing world, which is put down the paper, pick up the digitization, and really start reaping the benefits of it, not just within your manufacturing site, but for society, as we all have a safer, more efficient place to live.
Yeah, that's all good stuff. And so this week, FDA threw a wrench in the works by adding a delay to the deadline to have all this done. And so I wonder what you guys think about that. I think it's a 30-month delay for compliance.
Yeah. I saw that
something
too.
like that. And so we had these front-running retailers like Kroger and Walmart who were out in front of this, making decisions that really speed things up, and they were going to be compliant early. I'm sure they're still going to be compliant early. I don't think a delay means there's much of an opportunity to change the regulation, just giving everybody a little bit more breathing room to comply to the existing regulation. I wonder if any of you, Scott, how do you think this impacts people? Will people still push forward at the speed they are, and we're just helping the laggards? Or what's your opinion on that?
I think we are helping the laggards to a certain extent, but I think as people work on their implementations, they've certainly learned that this is a pretty complex process. And there really needs to be a lot of integration through the whole supply chain. So that level of complexity has become real for a lot of people now. And there was a lot of push by leadership in the food processing industry to get some type of delay. Even people that are working this every day have had some concern. But I think all that really does is now that people have had a chance to really learn what's involved in the regulation, they better use the delay to their advantage and design their systems and make their purchase decisions on technology, et cetera, that are going to be supportive of whether it comes through government mandate or customer requirement. You're going to have that capability sooner than later.
Yeah, that's FSMA 205.
Yeah.
I'm not even ready to start talking about that yet. So, Chris, I think it's interesting. You always talk about process and helping the customer make sure they've optimized the process. And so in FSMA 204 compliance, or really any regulatory compliance, you can't just assume that the current process is going to be adequate, right? That you have to start with the process and even the way people are doing work before you even make considerations for tools like Proficy, right?
That's correct. And in fact, we're surprised with the deadline that we were up against here, because it's not just a matter of putting enough time to put a system in place. In the previous podcast, we spoke about the idea that the manufacturing process itself might not be set up in a way where there can be accurate readings of every measurement of every lot used and have the level of traceability that's needed. So in some cases, I could see manufacturers having to rethink the way they do their process. To what extent does that mean? Of course, it's going to vary by site, but to have this extra time, these extra months to figure out not just how are we going to hook up sensors and get the integration to our ERP and all that, there could be some opportunities where it'll be making things more efficient maybe, but certainly tracking things in a way that it'll be more accurate. We've run into cases where it's just not happening right now. Like people would have to rethink and invest in sensors in order to really get the accuracy that they're asking for.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what Scott was alluding to when we were talking about the delay, is that people got into it thinking I can apply some digital technology to this, and found out that actually we have to change the way we do this altogether in order to capture it with the digital technology. And so I think that's an important point. I think that's a good example too, a good illustration of that exact situation. Any other comments as we reach the end of our time here today? Any other things that you want to say besides engage Rain Engineering if you want help with organizing your process or applying technology to help you become compliant, or that Vernova's Proficy Smart Factory is the very greatest tool on the market in order to comply with FSMA 204 and other FDA regulatory things, and that if you need guidance on how to rearrange your process or other considerations, that you should look at FSO Institute for some guidance and help around food safety and food safety management. Are there any other things that you guys think will help our audience to wrap their heads around all this?
Even with the delay, get started now. Come ask us for help, and we're all here to help you.
Yeah, don't get too concerned about the report. It's really, I think the processes are going to change a little bit, and you need to be prepared for that. So get started quickly. You got a little extra time, but don't let it run out.
All right. So we've reached the end of episode 3 of the food transparency and food safety FSMA 204 discussions. There may be some bonus items available in the future for those people who are affected by the delay. And we're looking forward to your comments. So be sure and leave comments on whatever platform you're viewing the podcast on. Thanks so much. I'm Don Rahrig signing off for Chris Carlins, Joe Gerstl, and Scott Butler. Everybody have a great weekend.